Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the human ship Meridian and watched the alien council members on his screen. Their faces showed no kindness. For 3 hours they had been telling him the same thing over and over. Humans were too dangerous. Humans caused too much trouble. Humans had to follow new rules or leave. The Zephyrian counselor spoke with a voice like wind through metal. Your species has brought nothing but chaos to our peaceful galaxy. You fight too much. You take too many risks. You refuse to follow proper order. Jake wanted to laugh, but he kept his face calm. Humans had saved the galaxy 12 times in the past 50 years. They had stopped 3 wars before they started. They had cured diseases that would have killed billions of aliens. They had built the defense systems that kept everyone safe from the monsters in the dark spaces between stars. But the aliens only remembered the times humans had said no to their demands. We have given you our final offer, the crystalline representative said. Its voice sounded like breaking glass. Submit to complete Federation oversight. Give us all your military technology. Accept permanent junior status in all galactic matters, or leave our space forever. The communication ended with a sharp click. Jake stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Behind him, his crew waited in silence. They all knew what this meant. 3 days later, Admiral Lisa Carter called together every human leader in the galaxy. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but when she spoke, everyone listened. She had led them through 2 wars and countless smaller conflicts. She had never let them down. They want us to be their servants, she said simply. They want us to give up everything that makes us human, our independence, our technology, our right to make our own choices. She looked around the room at the faces watching her. I say we give them exactly what they asked for. We leave. Dr. Ryan Clark raised his hand. He was young for a scientist, barely 30, but he ran the biggest research station in Federation space. Admiral, if we leave, what happens to our work? We have cures for diseases they don't even know exist yet. We have technology that could save millions of lives. We take it with us, Lisa said. All of it, every piece of research, every bit of technology, every defense system we built. If they don't want us here, they don't get to keep what we made. Engineer Kate Sullivan leaned forward. She was responsible for maintaining the infrastructure on 47 different worlds. That's going to be a big job. We built a lot of things over the years. Life support systems, power grids, transportation networks. The aliens don't even know how half of it works. Then they'll learn, Lisa said. Or they won't. That's their choice to make. The evacuation began immediately. It was the biggest operation in human history. Every human colony, research station, military base, and trading post had to be emptied. Every piece of human technology had to be removed or destroyed. Jake found himself coordinating supply runs between distant worlds. Human ships appeared seemingly from nowhere, loaded up with people and equipment, and disappeared again. The aliens watched with growing confusion as humans packed up their entire civilization. On the mining world of Kepler-7, Kate worked, 18-hour days dismantling the fusion reactors that powered the alien cities. The aliens had been using human-designed power systems for so long, they had forgotten how their old ones worked. Kate left them with basic generators that would
keep the lights on, but nothing more.
Why are you taking everything? Asked Zix, one of the alien engineers who had worked with Kate for 5 years. We need these systems to survive. Kate paused in her work. Zix had been a good friend. They had solved hundreds of problems together. You voted us out, she said quietly. You decided you didn't need us anymore, now you get to prove it. Dr. Ryan worked even harder than Kate. His research station held the cure for red plague, a disease that killed aliens but couldn't hurt humans. It also had early warning systems for solar flares that could destroy entire planets. And in the deep storage vaults, he kept samples of alien DNA that might be needed to save their species someday. He destroyed everything. The research computers were wiped clean. The biological samples were incinerated. The early warning networks were shut down and their codes were scrambled beyond repair. Ryan felt sick doing it, but the Federation had made their choice. His alien assistant, Dr. Venth, watched him work with growing horror. "Ryan, please, the Red Plague could come back any time. Without your cure, millions will die." Ryan stopped and looked at his old friend. They had worked together for 8 years. They had saved countless lives together. "Then you should have thought of that before you kicked us out." The most dangerous part of the evacuation was removing the defense systems. Humans had built a network of sensors and weapons platforms that watched for threats from outside the galaxy. The Void Stalkers had tried to invade twice before, and only human technology had stopped them. Colonel Ben Rodriguez supervised the removal of the outer defense ring. These were automated systems that most aliens didn't even know existed. They worked silently in the dark, watching and waiting for signs of danger. "Sir," said Sergeant Amy Foster, his communications officer, "I'm getting signals from the deep space monitors. Something big is moving out there." Ben looked at the data. The signatures were familiar and terrifying. Void Stalkers. Looks like a scouting force. He made a decision that would haunt him later. Shut down the monitoring stations, delete all the tracking data. "But sir, if we don't warn them..." "They made their choice, Sergeant. We're not their protectors anymore." The evacuation took 6 months. When it was finished, there were no humans left in Federation space. Not one. They had all moved beyond the galactic rim, to worlds that had never known alien rule. Admiral Lisa. Carter sent one final message to the Federation Council. It was short and simple. "You got what you wanted. We're gone. Don't follow us." The aliens celebrated. They held parties on 100 worlds. They made speeches about how much safer and more peaceful the galaxy would be without the troublesome humans. They divided up the empty human colonies among themselves. But in the months that followed, small problems began to appear. The power grid on Antares 3 flickered and went dark. The atmospheric processors on the mining worlds started making strange noises. The early warning systems that watched for asteroid impacts went silent one by one. The aliens weren't worried. They were smart and capable. They could figure out how to fix a few broken machines. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy was quiet and peaceful, just like the Federation Council had promised. The Zephyrians expanded their trade routes into former human territory. The Crystalline Collective opened new mining operations on worlds the humans had abandoned. Everything seemed perfect. Alex Turner wiped the sweat from his forehead and crawled deeper into the maintenance tunnel. He was one of only 12 humans who had stayed behind, hiding their true identity among the billions of aliens in Federation space. Officially, he was listed as a Terran mix hybrid, close enough to human to explain his appearance but different enough that no one asked hard questions. For 5 years, Alex had worked as a maintenance engineer on Centralis Prime, the Federation capital world. He kept the city's systems running while watching everything slowly fall apart around him. The aliens didn't see it yet, but Alex did. Every day brought new problems that the alien engineers couldn't solve. The atmospheric recycling system in Sector 7 was making strange noises again. Alex opened the access panel and looked inside. The biofilters were clogged with a type of bacteria that human engineers had learned to prevent decades ago. The alien manual said to replace the filters every 6 months. What it didn't say was that the bacteria would evolve to eat the new filters within weeks. Alex had been secretly adding human-designed enzyme treatments to the system. Without them, the entire sector would have been breathing toxic air years ago. But his supply of enzymes was running low, and he couldn't make more without equipment that didn't exist anymore. He fixed what he could and made notes in his private journal. Sector 7 had maybe 6 months before the system failed completely. When that happened, 50,000 aliens would have to evacuate their homes. 3 systems away, Dr. Nicole Adams was facing her own problems. She had spent 5 years working as a medical researcher under the name Dr. Nicola Adranis, close enough to her real name that she wouldn't forget to answer when someone called her. The fake identity papers had cost her everything she owned, but they were perfect. Nicole specialized in cross-species medicine, something the Federation desperately needed but didn't know how to do properly. Most alien doctors only understood their own biology. When diseases jumped between species, which happened more often than anyone wanted to admit, the results were usually catastrophic. The latest outbreak was on the Outer Rim worlds. A mining operation had disturbed something in the deep caves of Zerion 4. Whatever it was killing Zephyrians and crystallines alike. The Federation Health Authority had sent their best doctors, but none of them could figure out what they were dealing with. Nicole read the medical reports and knew immediately what the problem was. She had seen it before on human colonies. The organism was a type of fungal spore that lay dormant in certain types of rock. When exposed to oxygen, it became airborne and attacked the nervous systems of carbon-based life forms. The cure was simple if you knew what you were looking for. A combination of 3 common medications taken in a specific sequence would clear the infection in 48 hours. Nicole had written the treatment protocol herself, back when she was Dr. Nicole Adams of the Human Medical Corps. But Dr. Nicola Adranis wasn't supposed to know about human medical research. If she revealed the cure, questions would be asked. Her identity might be discovered. She would be arrested as a human spy. Nicole watched the death toll climb and did nothing. By the end of the month, 12,000 aliens had died from something she could have cured with a simple prescription. On the border worlds, Captain Ben Rodriguez watched from his hidden observation post as the Void Stalkers tested the galaxy's defenses. The creatures from the dark space between galaxies were patient and clever. They had been waiting for 5 years, learning, preparing. Ben's ship was small and fast, designed to stay hidden while gathering intelligence. He was officially listed as dead, killed in a mining accident 3 years ago. In reality, he and his crew of 8 were the only humans still monitoring the galaxy's security. What they saw terrified them. The Void Stalkers were probing the outer defense grid, testing response times and weapon capabilities. They had learned that the automated systems were failing one by one. Without human maintenance, the sensor networks were going blind. Without human tactical programs, the defensive algorithms were becoming predictable. Ben recorded everything and sent encrypted reports to Admiral Carter in the human colonies beyond the rim. He knew she was reading them, but no orders came back. The humans had made their choice. They were not coming back to fix the Federation's problems. The first major system failure happened on a Tuesday. The power grid on Antares 3 had been flickering for months, but the alien engineers kept insisting it was just minor fluctuations. They ran diagnostic after diagnostic, but they couldn't find the problem. Alex knew what was wrong. The fusion reactors were operating on human-designed safety protocols that hadn't been updated in 6 years. The alien engineers didn't understand the underlying physics well enough to modify the programs. They just kept applying patches and hoping for the best. When the main reactor finally overloaded, it took out half the city's power grid. 3 million aliens were left without electricity, heat, or water recycling. The backup systems lasted exactly 18 hours before they failed. 2. The Federation emergency response team arrived within days, but they couldn't fix what they didn't understand. They managed to get basic power restored to essential services, but large sections of the city remained dark. Thousands of aliens had to relocate to other worlds. The Federation Council called it an isolated incident. Equipment failures happened sometimes. There was no need to panic, but the failures were spreading. On the mining worlds, the Crystalline Collective's newest facilities started shutting down. The extraction equipment was based on human designs that required constant fine-tuning. Without human engineers to maintain the delicate balance of pressures and temperatures, the machines began destroying themselves. Mike Patterson watched from his monitoring station in the human colonies as entire industrial complexes went offline. He had helped design some of those systems years ago. He knew exactly what was failing and why, but he also knew that fixing them would require knowledge the aliens no longer possessed. The Crystalline Collective tried to hire new engineers, but no one understood the technology well enough to repair it. The machines were too complex, too integrated, too dependent on human innovation. Within a year, their mining output dropped by 60%. Similar problems appeared across the galaxy. The atmospheric processors that kept colonial worlds habitable started producing poisonous gases instead of breathable air. The terraforming projects that were turning dead worlds into garden planets began reversing themselves. The communication networks that connected distant star systems developed delays and dropped messages. Each failure was small by itself. Each could be explained away as an accident or a random malfunction. But Alex Turner saw the pattern. The galaxy was slowly falling apart, one system at a time. He made one final entry in his journal. They wanted us gone. Now they get to live with the consequences. God help them all, because no one else can. 10 years after the humans left, the galaxy was dying. Federation Admiral Zixithera stood in the ruins of what had once been the most important military base in known space. The Void Stalkers had attacked 3 days ago. They had swept through, the defenses like they didn't exist. 50,000 Federation soldiers were dead and the aliens had no idea how it happened. The attack had been perfect. The Void Stalkers knew exactly where the sensors were blind. They knew which weapons would be offline for maintenance. They knew the patrol schedules and the communication frequencies. It was like they had been watching and learning for years. Zixithera picked up a broken piece of equipment and studied it. The metal was twisted and burned, but she could still see the human writing etched into the side. Human numbers. Human letters. Human engineering. For the first time in 10 years, she wondered if they had made a mistake. The medical crisis was getting worse every day. Dr. Amy Foster sat in her laboratory in the human colonies and read the desperate messages that came through the secret communication networks. Plague was spreading through the inner worlds. 3 different diseases that should never have existed were killing aliens by the millions. The Federation doctors were helpless. They had tried everything they could think of, but nothing worked. The diseases were too complex, too aggressive, too smart. They adapted faster than the aliens could develop treatments. Amy knew what was happening. These weren't natural diseases. They were the result of biological warfare agents that had been contained in human research facilities. When the humans left, they had destroyed most of their dangerous research, but some samples had been missed. Now those samples were loose, in the wild, mutating and spreading. She had the cures. All of them. The treatments were sitting in her computer, ready to be transmitted to any Federation medical facility. But the orders from the human leadership were clear. No contact, no help, no exceptions. Amy watched the death counts rise and felt sick, but she followed her orders. On the mining worlds, engineer Mike Patterson received his weekly reports from the hidden monitoring stations. The news was always the same. More failures, more collapses, more systems shutting down permanently. The Crystalline Collective had lost 80% of their industrial capacity. Their newest facilities were twisted wreckage. Their oldest ones were running on backup power and prayers. They had tried to reverse engineer the human technology, but it was too advanced. Every attempt to modify the systems made them fail faster. The Federation's entire economy was built on crystalline mining operations. Without raw materials, trade routes were shutting down. Without trade, colonies were running out of food and medicine. Entire star systems were being abandoned as their populations fled to more stable worlds. But there were no stable worlds anymore. The problems were everywhere. Captain Ben Rodriguez watched from his hidden ship as the Void Stalkers launched their biggest attack yet. They came from the dark spaces between galaxies in ships that looked like living nightmares. Thousands of them moving in perfect formation toward the heart of Federation space. The outer defense grid tried to respond, but half the sensors were offline and the other half were giving false readings. The automated weapon systems fired at empty space while the real enemy slipped past undetected. The few manned defense stations were overwhelmed in minutes. Ben's communication officer, Sergeant Amy Foster, looked up from her instruments with fear in her eyes. "Sir, they're heading straight for the core worlds. The Federation capital, they'll be there in 6 days." Ben stared at the tactical display. He could warn the Federation. He could tell them exactly where the Void Stalkers would attack and how to stop them. The defense plans were still in his computer, gathering dust for 10 years, but his orders were clear. He was an observer, nothing more. "Continue monitoring," he said quietly. "Do not transmit." The Federation Council met in emergency session as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Void Stalker invasion was spreading faster than anyone had thought possible. Defense fleets were being destroyed before they could even identify the enemy. Civilian populations were evacuating en masse, but there was nowhere safe to go. Counselor Vexandra studied the tactical reports with growing horror. The enemy knew everything about Federation defenses. They knew exactly which worlds to hit and which to ignore. They knew how to disable the communication networks and how to jam the sensor arrays. It was like they had been planning this attack for years. "How is this possible?" demanded the Zephyrian representative. "Our intelligence said the Voidstalkers were primitive savages. How do they know so much about our technology?" An aide approached with another report. "Counselor, we've found something. In the archives. Old files from the human occupation." The aide's voice was shaking. The humans had extensive records of Voidstalker capabilities, detailed analysis of their ships, their weapons, their tactics. They built our entire defense network specifically to counter Voidstalker attacks. The council chamber fell silent. "Where are these files now?" Vexandra asked. "Gone, Counselor. Destroyed when the humans left. But there are references to something called the Void Watch Protocol. It was a comprehensive early warning system that monitored the spaces between galaxies. The humans maintained it for over 50 years. Vexandra felt cold. "When was it shut down?" 10 years ago, Counselor, the day the humans left." The realization hit the council like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been building random defenses. They had been preparing for this specific threat. Every sensor array, every weapon platform, every tactical protocol had been designed to fight the Voidstalkers. And now, it was all gone. On the capital world, Alex Turner finished his final report. The atmospheric systems were failing faster than he could repair them. Sections of the city were already being evacuated as the air became poisonous. The backup life support systems were burning out one by one. He had done what he could for 10 years, but he was just one man. The city needed 1,000 human engineers working around the clock. Instead, it had alien technicians who were trained to follow procedures but not to understand the underlying principles. Alex sealed his report and prepared to leave. His secret identity wouldn't protect him much longer. When the life support systems failed completely, there would be investigations. Questions would be asked. His human heritage would be discovered. It was time to go home. But as he packed his few belongings, Alex received a message that changed everything. It was from Dr. Nicole Adams, transmitted through the secret human communication network. "The Federation has sent a formal request for assistance," the message said. "They're offering full restoration of human rights, equal status in the Federation, council and shared governance of all military forces. Admiral Carter is considering a response." Alex looked out his window at the dying city. Smoke was rising from a dozen different districts. Emergency vehicles were racing through the streets. Alien families were loading their possessions onto transport ships fleeing to other worlds that were just as doomed. The Federation was finally ready to admit they had been wrong. But Alex wondered if it was already too late. The damage was too extensive. The problems were too complex. Even if the humans came back tomorrow, it might take decades to fix what had been broken. And in the dark spaces between galaxies, the Voidstalkers were still coming. President Laura Mitchell stood before the Human Council in the Great Hall of New Terra Prime. Around her sat the leaders of humanity's new civilization. They had built something beautiful beyond the galactic rim, cities that floated in space, worlds that had been turned into gardens, ships that could travel between galaxies like the old ones had traveled between planets. 15 years of freedom had changed them. They were no longer the desperate refugees who had fled Federation space. They were something new, something better. "The Federation is dying," Laura said simply. "Their final message came yesterday. They offer complete surrender. They want us to rule the galaxy. They say they'll give us anything we want if we just save them." Dr. Chris Bennett, the head of human research, laughed bitterly. "Now they want us back. After they called us dangerous. After they said we were too violent for civilized space." Engineer Maria Santos nodded. "I've been watching their systems fail for years. It's even worse than we thought. Their entire civilization is collapsing. Without our technology, without our knowledge, they can't maintain what they built, General. Kevin Wright stood and activated the holographic display. It showed the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under Void Stalker control. Yellow zones showed regions where the infrastructure was failing. Green zones indicated stable areas. There was very little green. The Void Stalkers control 40% of known space, Kevin said. They're moving toward the galactic core. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach the Federation capital in 30 days. Laura studied the display. How many people will die if we do? Nothing? Conservative estimate, 2 trillion aliens, maybe more. The room fell silent. 2 trillion lives. It was a number too big to understand, but they all tried. And if we intervene? Laura asked. Kevin changed the display to show fleet positions. We can stop them. Our new technology is centuries ahead of anything in the galaxy. We could drive back the Void Stalkers in a matter of weeks. But should we? Dr. Bennett asked. They made their choice 15 years ago. They decided they didn't want us. Why should we save them now? The debate went on for hours. Some argued for helping. Others said humanity owed the Federation nothing. A few suggested taking control of the galaxy like the aliens had offered. Laura listened to all of them, but her mind was already made up. She had been thinking about this moment for years. We're not going back to save the Federation, she said finally. We're going back to save the innocent people who are dying. The children who had no say in what their leaders did. The millions who never voted to kick us out. She stood and walked to the window. Outside, human ships were already preparing for departure. News of the Federation's collapse had spread quickly. Many humans wanted to help, even after everything that had happened. But we're not staying, Laura continued. We're not taking control of their government. We're not accepting their surrender. We save them, and then we leave. Forever this time. 3 days later, the human fleet appeared at the edge of Federation space. Admiral Lisa Carter, now in her 70s but still sharp as a blade, commanded from the bridge of the flagship Liberty. She had been waiting for this moment for 15 years. The human ships were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They moved without making sound. They appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets without seeming to fire a shot. Captain Tony Harper led the first attack against the Void Stalkers. His ship, the Defiance, was smaller than the old human vessels, but infinitely more powerful. When the Void Stalkers tried to use their standard tactics, they found themselves fighting an enemy that wasn't there. Human ships phased in and out of normal space. They struck from impossible angles. They moved faster than light without using hyperspace. The Void Stalkers, who had been unstoppable for months, were suddenly being destroyed by the hundreds. But the humans weren't just fighting. They were also fixing. Dr. Amy Foster and her medical teams appeared on plague-stricken worlds with cures that worked like miracles. Diseases that had killed millions were eliminated in days. The biological weapons that had been spreading chaos were neutralized with treatments so advanced they seemed like magic. Engineer Kate Sullivan led repair teams to the failing industrial worlds. They didn't just fix the broken systems. They rebuilt them with technology that was decades ahead of anything the aliens had seen. Power grids that could run for centuries without maintenance. Manufacturing systems that could repair themselves. The Federation watched in amazement as their dying civilization was brought back to life. But they also watched with growing fear. The humans had become something far beyond what they used to be. These weren't the aggressive, unpredictable species they remembered. These were beings who could remake entire worlds with a thought. The final battle happened at the edge of the galactic core. The Void Stalkers had gathered their entire fleet for one last assault on the Federation capital. Millions of nightmare ships moved in perfect formation, ready to destroy the heart of galactic civilization. They met a human fleet that numbered less than 1,000 ships. Admiral Carter gave the order to attack, and the galaxy learned what humanity had become. The human ships didn't just fight the Void Stalkers, they erased them. Entire enemy fleets simply stopped existing. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for months were gone in minutes. When the battle was over, the Federation sent thousands of messages of thanks. They offered treaties, trade agreements, and permanent alliances. They begged the humans to stay and help rebuild. Laura Mitchell's response was broadcast to every world in the galaxy. "We came because people were dying," she said. "We stayed long enough to stop the immediate threats. Now we're leaving. Do not follow us. Do not try to contact us. Learn to stand on your own." But before they left, the humans did one last thing. They established a new monitoring system in the dark spaces between galaxies, automated sensors that would watch for future Void Stalker incursions, emergency beacons that would warn the galaxy if other threats appeared. The system would run for 1,000 years without human oversight. After that, the galaxy would have to protect itself. Colonel Steve Mason was the last human to leave Federation space. He had been monitoring the evacuation from a hidden base in the Outer Rim. As his ship prepared to jump to hyperspace, he recorded one final message. "To whoever finds this recording," he said, "the humans tried to be your friends. You decided. You didn't want friends. You wanted servants. Now you know the difference." He paused and looked back toward the galactic core. "We're not your enemies. We never were, but we're not your protectors anymore either. You're on your own now. Try not to destroy yourselves before you learn to be better." The human fleet vanished into the space between galaxies, heading for destinations unknown. Behind them, the Federation began the long process of rebuilding, but they rebuilt differently this time. They studied the systems the humans had left behind. They learned to maintain their own technology. They prepared for the day when they might face another crisis alone. Some Federation leaders proposed sending expeditions to find the humans. Those proposals were quickly voted down. The humans had made their position clear. They were done with the galaxy. In the years that followed, the Federation found messages hidden in the systems the humans had repaired. Technical manuals, scientific discoveries, medical research, everything the aliens needed to continue advancing on their own. The final message was found in the Federation archives, hidden in the deepest levels of the computer system. It was addressed to future generations of aliens, to species that might one day face the same choice the Federation had faced. "Diversity makes us stronger," the message said. "Fear makes us weaker. When someone offers to help, don't ask what they want in return. Ask what you can accomplish together. The universe is big enough for all of us, but only if we choose to share it." The message was signed by every human who had ever served in Federation space. Millions of names, representing millions of lives dedicated to helping others. At the bottom, in simple letters, were the words, "We forgive you. Do better next time." The galaxy never saw the humans again, but they never forgot the lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from knowing when to let go.